My name is Carrie Davidson, and I'm 32 years old. At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday, I was wrapping up a client presentation when my phone lit up. The screen flashed a name that had once made my pulse quicken: Brandon. The message preview was short, almost polite in its cruelty. "You're suffocating me. I need to find myself." The room around me went silent, though everyone else kept talking. My throat went dry. I smiled, mechanically, thanked the team, and ended the call. The cursor blinked on my laptop, waiting for the next line of data. But the only numbers I could see were the 3 years I'd spent paying his rent, his phone bill, his car insurance, all adding up to one giant mistake. I typed back a single sentence: "Good luck finding yourself." And just like that, 3 years of my life evaporated into the cloud. That night, I didn't cry. I made tea, sat on my couch, and stared at the city lights outside my downtown apartment, the same apartment he'd begged to move into when his yoga classes weren't covering his bills. My phone rang. Brandon. Of course. The man who just needed space now wanted to talk. I answered, keeping my voice flat. "Hey." He exhaled dramatically, the same way he did after his morning meditations. "You really texted good luck." "That's it. You said you need to find yourself. I'm letting you. You can't even try to talk this through." I leaned back. "Brandon, you said I'm suffocating you. I'm giving you air." He went silent. Then, "You just don't get it. I feel trapped, Carrie. You control everything. The rent, the bills, our schedule. I can't breathe in this relationship. You can't breathe because you're living rent-free," I said, more amused than angry. "Maybe try paying a bill or two, see if oxygen returns." He scoffed. "That's exactly what I mean. Everything's about money to you." I bit back a laugh. "That's because money is what keeps a roof over our heads and food on our table. Spiritual energy can't pay PG&E. See, you're always belittling what I do. Yoga is my passion, Carrie. Passion doesn't mean it has to be my paycheck." He sighed like he was the victim of the century. "You're 32. You don't understand. I'm 27. I'm supposed to be exploring life, not living some corporate routine. And yet you're exploring life in an apartment I pay for." Silence again. I could almost hear him blinking. "Fine," he said finally. "I'm moving out. I already found a place." I raised an eyebrow. "With what money?" "Wow," he snapped. "You think I'm incapable of doing anything without you. I think math exists. Rent costs money. You make $400 a week." He didn't answer. Then he tried the emotional exit. "You know what, Carrie? I expected you to fight for me." My voice softened, but only slightly. "Fighting for you is what got me here, drained, tired, and apparently suffocating you. So no, Brandon, I'm not fighting. I'm letting go." He hung up. I sat there, phone still glowing, and let the silence wrap around me. Somewhere deep down, a part of me wanted to scream, to call him back, to demand an explanation. But another part, the older, quieter part, whispered, "You already know how this ends. You just didn't want to admit it." When I first met Brandon, he was charming in that effortless, artistic way. Barefoot in cafes, talking about manifesting abundance while I was juggling back-to-back clients. He'd laugh about my spreadsheets, saying I was too structured for the universe. I thought he balanced me, until I realized he was just leaning on me. It started small. His rent was late, once then, twice. His car payment bounced. His yoga clients needed flexibility, so I covered gaps. He'd promised to repay the energy someday. I guess I should have asked for dollars instead of energy. Now the free spirit wanted to fly solo. Fine, I'd let him. I looked around the apartment, the Peloton I bought him for Christmas that he never used. The stacks of unopened healing crystals, the espresso machine he swore was essential to his morning gratitude ritual. All of it suddenly looked like props from a movie I no longer wanted to star in. My phone buzzed again. Another text from him. "You'll regret this. You can't just walk away like that." I typed back but didn't send. "I'm not walking away, Brandon. I'm stepping back so you can see yourself clearly without me holding the mirror." Then I deleted it. No point explaining self-awareness to someone still discovering self-entitlement. I shut off my phone and stared at the ceiling. In the quiet, I realized something. This wasn't heartbreak. This was detox. All the guilt, all the caretaking, all the mental gymnastics of trying to make him feel enough gone in one text message. The kettle clicked as it cooled. The city hummed outside my window. Somewhere out there, Brandon was probably telling his friends how I chose money over love. And maybe he was right, but at least my money never ghosted me after a yoga retreat. I took a slow breath and whispered to myself, "When someone says you're suffocating them, give them all the air they want." Then I smiled, small, quiet, but real. I didn't know it yet, but that message wasn't the end of something. It was the beginning of a long, delicious lesson in what happens when a man goes looking for himself and finds nothing worth keeping. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of metal scraping pavement, that distinct hollow clang of a U-Haul ramp. For a moment, I thought it was just delivery noise from the street below. Then I heard his voice. "Brandon." Through the open window came his dramatic tone, echoing like some tragic actor in a street play. "No, man, she's being cold, like emotionally frozen. I told her I needed to find myself, and she just said, 'Good luck.' Who does that?" I poured myself coffee, mine, of course, and watched from the kitchen window as he and his friend Jake hauled boxes labeled "My Stuff." Most of it had been bought with my credit card. I could have gone out there. I could have yelled. But instead, I took another sip of coffee and decided to treat the moment like a live documentary, The Modern Man's Quest for Freedom, sponsored by someone else's paycheck. Still, a part of me burned. Not from loss, but from how easily he performed heartbreak for an audience. Jake nodded sympathetically, carrying the Peloton I'd gifted Brandon 2 Christmases ago, the one he'd used twice. "You sure she's not just jealous of your independence?" Jake asked. "Exactly," Brandon said. "She doesn't understand I need space to create. I can't create under control." "Create what debt?" I set down the mug, took a steady breath, and walked to the doorway. When Brandon saw me, he froze. I was still in my silk robe hair, tied back calm as a judge. "Morning," I said softly. "I see you found a moving company." He blinked, maybe expecting tears, maybe a scene. "Yeah, figured I'd get started early." "Great. The sooner the better." I pointed to the espresso machine in his box. "That's staying." He frowned. "You bought it for us. I bought it for the apartment. And since you're leaving the apartment, it stays." Jake looked between us, uncomfortable. Brandon scoffed. "You're being ridiculous. It's just a coffee maker." "Then it should be easy to replace," I said, smiling. "Independence, remember." He slammed it onto the counter a little too hard. "You're unbelievable, Carrie. No wonder I can't breathe around you." I tilted my head. "You mean because I don't let you take everything that isn't nailed down?" Jake muttered under his breath. "She's toxic, bro." I laughed quietly. If holding adults accountable is toxic, call me Venom. When they finally left, I stood in the doorway watching the U-Haul pull away. Half the apartment looked bare, empty hangers, missing pillows, a void where his self-help books used to sit collecting dust. But the silence that followed wasn't sad. It was clean. The kind of silence that lets your thoughts stretch without bumping into someone else's chaos. I went back inside and did what I do best order. Canceled his phone line, removed him from my streaming services, changed passwords. I even called the phone company and said, "Hi, yes, the additional line on my account belongs to someone who's currently finding himself. Please disconnect it." The representative laughed. "Say no more, ma'am." By noon, the apartment was mine again, both physically and energetically. I opened the windows. The air felt sharp, new, and unsupervised. Then my phone buzzed. A text. "Brandon, you'll regret this when I'm successful." "Me, I'm already successful. You should try it sometime." I didn't hit send. I deleted it instead. He didn't deserve a reaction. Silence was the purest form of independence. That evening, I found one of his crystals under the bed, a jagged chunk of rose quartz he claimed balanced our love energy. I turned it over in my hand, its edges catching the light. 3 years together, and this pink rock had done more emotional labor than he ever did. I placed it in the trash. No ceremony, no regret. As the sun dipped below the skyline, I sat by the window again. The city buzzed with a rhythm I hadn't heard in years, life without him. And then, for the first time in months, I did something spontaneous. I ordered takeout. The good kind sushi from the place he said was too corporate. I ate it right out of the box feed on the coffee table, Netflix on my account. Between bites, I whispered to the empty room. "Congratulations, Brandon. You found freedom. I found peace." A gentle hum from the refrigerator filled the quiet. It was the sound of a life running smoothly again. I didn't know it then, but this was only the start of his unraveling. Because when a man walks out thinking he's escaping control, he never expects the world to demand discipline in her place. 3 days. That's how long Brandon's journey of self-discovery lasted before my phone rang again, an unknown number this time. I almost didn't answer. But curiosity, that dangerous little echo, made me swipe. "Carrie, it's me." I didn't even sigh. "You'll have to be more specific. I've been deleting freeloaders from my contact list." He ignored the jab. "Look, I need to talk. About what? This place I got, it's not what I thought." I leaned back in my chair, twirling a pen between my fingers. Define not what I thought. It's a studio apartment. The bathroom doesn't even have a door, just a curtain. And the rent is $1,500 a month, which I cut him off gently, which is almost double what you contributed when you lived here rent-free. He huffed. You don't have to rub it in. I'm trying. Okay, I had to pay first, last, and security. I'm broke. Then congratulations, I said, calm as glass. You've officially found yourself. He groaned. Carrie, I'm serious. I need a little help until I get more classes scheduled. I smiled to myself. Maybe ask the universe. I hear it provides when you're aligned with your purpose. Come on, don't be cruel. I'm not cruel, I said. I'm consistent. You wanted distance. This is what distance looks like. He hung up, but the calls didn't stop. By day 2, I was getting texts like, can you at least cover my phone bill? I can't get clients if I can't post on Instagram. Do you still have my yoga mat? No and no. I blocked the number. But Brandon was resourceful in all the wrong ways. By the weekend, his mother called me. Carrie, it's Deborah. I just talked to Brandon. He says you cut him off completely. Correct. Sweetheart, he's struggling. He can't afford groceries. He's 27, Deborah. If he can teach a class on mindfulness, he can mindfully manage a budget. She gasped like I'd slapped her through the phone. That's cruel. I pinched the bridge of my nose. No, that's parenting. You might try it. Silence. Then she muttered, you never understood him. He's sensitive. I understood him perfectly. He's allergic to consequences. Deborah hung up without another word. That night I sat alone on my couch with a glass of wine and the city humming outside. My friends had told me to block him completely, but I didn't. Not yet. Some part of me needed to see how this would play out, not for revenge, but for closure. I opened Instagram. There he was, a new post. Sometimes you have to lose yourself to truly find who you are. The photo, him cross-legged on a borrowed yoga mat, a single candle burning beside him, captioned with the hashtag freedom vibes. The irony was delicious. He'd blocked me, but his account was public, the digital version of standing on my doorstep and shouting his enlightenment. I scrolled through the comments. His followers called him brave, inspiring a soul reborn. None of them knew the man had cried over losing my coffee maker. I laughed so hard I nearly spilled the wine. Then I paused, not out of pity, but out of realization. For years, I'd been playing caretaker to a grown man with a spiritual vocabulary and the emotional maturity of a teenager. I'd called it love, but it was a quiet kind of codependence, the kind that wears lipstick and calls itself empathy. 3 nights later, the same unknown number called again. This time, I answered. He didn't even say hello. Do you ever stop being so heartless? Usually, I said. But you caught me on a productive streak. I'm serious, Carrie. You ruined me. You made me dependent on you, and then you just stopped paying your bills, I said. That's not ruining you, Brandon. That's setting you free. He scoffed. You love control. You always have. No, I said quietly. I loved peace. You just kept mistaking it for control. He went silent for a long time before blurting, I just thought you'd fight for me. I felt a sting, not from his words, but from how small they sounded. Fight for what I asked. The version of you that only existed because I kept rescuing him. He didn't respond. I could hear his breath trembling on the line. I made a mistake, he whispered finally. You did, I said gently. You mistook comfort for captivity. Then I hung up. Afterward, I stood by the window again, watching the streetlights glow like quiet warnings in the distance. The city below was loud with people trying to make something of themselves. Somewhere down there, Brandon was one of them, a man on a spiritual journey with no GPS and no sense of direction. I thought about unblocking him for a moment. Then I remembered his words. You're suffocating me. So I left him to his fresh air. Because the thing about freedom is it's only romantic until the bills arrive. And I had a feeling the universe was about to start charging him interest. A week passed. Then 2. Peace had a sound now. The low hum of the fridge, the click of my keyboard, my own breath filling the silence he used to crowd. I had almost forgotten what calm felt like. Then his name showed up again, not on my phone, but on Instagram. There he was, shirtless, in the same pair of linen pants I bought him, sitting on a beach towel outside what looked suspiciously like a parking lot. The caption read, Escaping toxicity, reclaiming my energy, finding freedom, hashtag healing journey, hashtag self-love. The comment section was a shrine of sympathy. You're glowing. Proud of you, King. Never let anyone dim your light. I scrolled, shaking my head. He had turned our breakup into content. It would have been almost funny if it weren't so predictable. 2 days later, my friend Lena sent me a screenshot. Girl, he's calling you a narcissist on his stories. Sure enough, it was a clip of Brandon looking heartbreak hollow into the camera saying, when you love someone too much, they weaponize it. They start controlling you. Financial abuse is real. Financial abuse, I actually snorted out loud. I typed back to Lena. He must have confused support with subsidy. Easy mistake. I didn't respond publicly, didn't comment, didn't defend, because karma has Wi-Fi and it travels faster than any post. By the weekend it did. Someone I still don't know who leaked old screenshots from his messages. Him begging me to cover his phone bill. Asking for money for chakra realignment. The Bali retreat deposit he never refunded. The comments turned on him overnight. Wait, weren't you living off your ex? So she was the toxic one for paying your rent. Bro, this ain't healing. This is freeloading. His spiritual rebirth collapsed faster than a cheap yoga mat. That night I poured myself wine and watched his follower count drop in real time. I should have felt vindicated, but what I really felt was relief. The truth was doing the talking for once, and I didn't have to lift a finger. Monday morning brought a new flavor of absurd, an email titled Legal Notice, Domestic Partnership Compensation. It looked official until I read the sender, Jake, law student, Outlook.com. Dear Ms. Davidson, my client, Mr. Brandon Hayes, seeks fair compensation for 3 years of domestic partnership during which he provided emotional labor companionship and personal support under the common law marriage doctrine. I laughed so hard I choked on my coffee. I forwarded it to my actual lawyer friend, Sarah. Her reply came 2 minutes later. Tell the spiritual guru that California doesn't recognize common law marriage. Also, emotional labor is not a taxable income stream. Then she added, P.S. Please frame this. It's art. By Wednesday, the universe delivered again. Lena texted, You're not going to believe this. His studio apartment totally illegal sublet. The landlord found out through his Instagram stories. An hour later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered, already smiling. Carrie. His voice cracked, raw and desperate. I heard you got evicted, I said lightly. Congratulations. You're moving a lot on this journey. This isn't funny. I'm literally homeless. You're not homeless, Brandon. You're just temporarily unaligned. Stop making jokes. Please, I need somewhere to stay for a few days. The last time you stayed somewhere for a few days, it lasted 3 years, I said. He didn't laugh. I'm sleeping on Jake's couch. Then manifest gratitude. The universe just gave you furniture. You don't have to be like this, he said, voice trembling. I'm not being anything. I'm just not being your safety net. There was a long pause. Then he whispered, I didn't think you'd actually let me fall. Maybe falling is how you finally find the ground. He hung up. Later that night, I looked through our old messages. There was one from last year where he'd written, You're the calm in my chaos. At the time, it sounded romantic. Now it sounded like a diagnosis. I deleted it. Before bed, I opened the window. The city air felt cooler than usual, cleaner somehow. Freedom wasn't loud or cinematic like I thought it'd be. It was quiet, soft. The sound of your phone not ringing when it used to. The next morning, a text from an unknown number. He's falling apart. Maybe you went too far. Jake. I stared at it for a second before replying. No, Jake, I just finally stopped going too far. And for the first time since this all began, I meant it. It started with a knock. Not the kind that's polite, this one was sharp, rhythmic, official. When I opened the door, a police officer stood there, hat tucked under his arm. Ms. Davidson. We received a complaint of possible illegal eviction. For a split second, I almost laughed. Let me guess, Brandon Hayes. He flipped through his notepad. Yes, ma'am. Says you're withholding his personal belongings. I gestured inside. Would you like a tour of the empty space where his belongings used to be? The officer glanced past me. Pristine apartment, minimal furniture, not a trace of Brandon's mess. He mentioned a vision board crystals and a jade roller. I blinked. That's what we're here for. His jade roller. The officer tried not to smile. Between you and me, this is the third case this month involving what I'll politely call wellness influencer disputes. I went to my desk, pulled up my laptop, and opened a folder labeled Receipts. Bank statements, photos of him moving out, even the U-Haul rental confirmation. See, I said, scrolling. He left voluntarily. October 15th. Even took my air fryer. The officer nodded. That's pretty clear. Sorry to bother you. No bother at all, I said sweetly. Please tell him the jade roller achieved self-actualization and moved on. He actually chuckled. Will do, ma'am. When the door closed, I exhaled. For a second, I thought that was the end of it, But Brandon's kind of chaos doesn't end. It evolves. That evening, I got an email from him. This is your last chance to handle this privately before I pursue legal action. Attached was a document titled Statement of Damages for Emotional Labor. It listed, among other things, energy exchange for relationship, maintenance, $15,000. Domestic companionship services, $9,000. Emotional coaching, unpaid, $12,000. I almost admired the creativity. I sent it to Sarah, my lawyer friend, again. She called within minutes, laughing so hard she could barely breathe. Carrie, I've represented startup founders and divorcees, but this belongs in a museum of entitlement. Should I respond? I asked. Oh, yes, she said, politely, professionally, and with enough sarcasm to sterilize the whole situation. We drafted a simple reply. Dear Mr. Hayes, Ms. Davidson is not in breach of any contractual, emotional, or spiritual obligations. Please direct future correspondence to a licensed therapist instead of a lawyer. Regards, Sarah Lynn, East Q. 3 days later, the building security called me. Ms. Davidson. There's a man downstairs saying he lives here. Let me guess, Brandon Hayes. Yes, ma'am. He says you're illegally keeping his belongings. I sighed, again. When I got downstairs, he was pacing by the front desk, hair messy, voice raised. She's lying. She won't let me in. I still have things inside. I folded my arms. Everything you owned fit into that U-Haul you drove away in. What exactly do you think is left? My supplements, my diffuser, your excuses I offered. He turned red. You can't just erase someone like that, Brandon, I said calmly. You broke up with me. You moved out. You posted about escaping toxicity to 3,000 followers. You erased yourself. Security stepped between us. Sir, you'll need to leave. He pointed at me, eyes wide and trembling. You think this is over? I smiled faintly. I was hoping it was. He left muttering something about karma. Funny. Karma and I had been getting along just fine lately. That night I poured wine again and tried to shake off the encounter. The city outside my window looked cleaner, sharper somehow, like the fog of his chaos had finally lifted. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. Just free. Then my phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. He's got a new girlfriend already. Older woman. Owns a holistic supply store. Says they're soulmates. I smiled. Of course. Brandon didn't find himself. He found another sponsor. I typed back to Lena. At least he's staying consistent with his brand-conscious dependency. She replied with 3 laughing emojis and a single line. You won the breakup. But I didn't want to win. I just wanted quiet. Later that night, I lay in bed and thought about the officer's words, wellness influencer disputes. It was almost poetic. That's what my relationship had been all along, one long, performative act of healing, while I quietly footed the bill. I turned off the light, smiling to myself. If Brandon ever truly wanted peace, he'd have to find it on his own dime. Because freedom, I'd learned, isn't about leaving someone. It's about no longer being the one they call when they fall apart. It had been 3 months since the last call. 3 whole months without Brandon's name lighting up my phone without guilt, disguised as conversation without another urgent emotional crisis that only my money could fix. I'd finally started sleeping through the night again. The apartment looked different now. His old meditation space, the one filled with sage smoke and unpaid credit card energy, was gone. In its place stood a sleek desk, 2 monitors, a few plants that actually thrived because I watered them instead of manifesting hydration. I'd stopped replaying old arguments in my head, stopped wondering if I was the villain in his story, because frankly his story wasn't interesting anymore. And maybe that's what real healing looks like when boredom replaces heartbreak. That Saturday, I went to Whole Foods with William, my new boyfriend. He was an architect, calm, methodical, grounded in a way that made silence feel safe again. We were debating the merits of overpriced organic honey when I heard it, a voice I hadn't heard in months but could recognize in a hurricane. Carrie. I turned and there he was. Brandon. He stood in the produce aisle, hair a little longer, beard uneven, wearing an off-brand linen shirt that tried too hard to look expensive. And beside him a woman. Mid-40s, blonde, highlights, wide smile, holding a basket full of turmeric shots and collagen powder. This is awkward, I said under my breath. He stepped closer, all false calm. Hey, wow, you look good. I am good, I replied simply. He smiled like he wanted that to sound flirty. It didn't. This is Diana, he said, motioning to the woman. She owns a holistic wellness boutique downtown. Of course she does. Nice to meet you, I said politely. Brandon's talked about manifesting abundance. I see he finally found a sponsor for it. Diana laughed awkwardly, not realizing it wasn't a compliment. Brandon scratched the back of his neck. So, how have you been? Peaceful, I said. And you? He hesitated. Still on my journey. Ah, I nodded. Still billing the universe monthly. His smile faltered. That's when William appeared pushing our cart. Babe, they were out of the clover honey, but I got the raw one you like. Perfect, I said, taking it from him. William looked at Brandon, extending a hand. Hey, I'm William. Brandon shook it stiffly. Brandon, nice to meet you. Diana was still smiling, but I could see the flicker of curiosity in her eyes, the kind of woman who'd already Googled me once. Well, I said it was nice running into you both. Take care. We walked off. I didn't look back, but I could feel him watching. Outside, as we loaded bags into the car, William chuckled. That was your ex, huh? Unfortunately, he looked lost. I shrugged. He's been looking for himself for a while now. William grinned. And did he find anything in audience, I said. And another wallet. He laughed, and I found myself laughing too, a full, genuine laugh that felt like release. Later that night, I got a text from an unknown number. You moved on fast. No greeting, no name, but I didn't need one. I typed slowly, deliberately. I moved on exactly as fast as you left. The only difference is I didn't pretend it was spiritual growth. Then I deleted it. Didn't send it. Because closure isn't always confrontation. Sometimes it's silence and a good night's sleep. As I got ready for bed, I glanced at myself in the mirror. The woman looking back wasn't bitter, just steady. The kind of steady you earn by surviving people who confuse chaos for depth. I brushed my hair, turned off the light, and whispered, Thank you for finding yourself, Brandon. I finally found me too. 3 months became 6, and by then the past felt like someone else's story. One I'd stopped rereading. My mornings were quiet again. No dramatic sighs about energetic misalignment. No unpaid bills disguised as manifesting abundance. Just peace. Real, unfiltered, and fully mine. The last trace of Brandon in my life had been a forgotten t-shirt at the back of a drawer. I used it once to polish my wine glasses, then threw it out. Somehow that felt like the perfect metaphor. One rainy afternoon, I got a message from Lena. You need to see this. Check his new page. Curiosity 1. I opened Instagram, his third account since the healing from toxicity era. There he was again, only now the tone had changed. Sometimes the universe humbles you to heal you. The caption was longer than a college essay, all about his spiritual awakening after losing material comfort. He tagged no one, but the subtext was loud. Scrolling down, I saw he'd broken up with Diana, the wellness boutique owner. A follower commented something like, Didn't she pay your rent? And I had to close the app before I started laughing. Apparently, enlightenment didn't come with a payment plan. A few weeks later, an email arrived. Subject line apology. I hovered over it for a long time before opening it. Carrie, you don't owe me anything, but I owe you everything. You were right. I wasn't trying to find myself. I was trying to avoid growing up. I blamed you for the stability I never built myself. I'm sorry. Hope you're happy now. B. I didn't reply. Not because I hated him, because there was nothing left to say. Some people apologize to ease their guilt, not to heal yours, and I was already healed. That night, William cooked dinner. Jazz played softly. The air smelled of rosemary and something simple but comforting, exactly what love should smell like. He poured me wine and said, You've been quiet tonight. Just thinking, I said, about how sometimes the best revenge is no revenge at all. He smiled. You've got that Zen glow again. I laughed. I'm not Zen. I'm just done. He raised his glass to being done. I clinked his, to never mistaking chaos for chemistry again. Later, as I lay in bed, the rain tapping the window like punctuation, I whispered the truth I'd learned the hard way. When they say they need to find themselves, let them. Because if they're worth keeping, they'll find someone better inside that space. And if they're not, you'll find peace in their absence. Either way, someone gets found. Sometimes I think back to that day, the text, the silence, the ache. I used to think that moment broke me, but it didn't. It introduced me to the version of myself that doesn't chase, doesn't fix, doesn't beg to be chosen. Brandon wanted air. I gave it to him. And in the emptiness he left behind, I discovered something he never could, stillness that doesn't need applause. The world is full of people who'll claim they're on a journey. Some are walking toward growth. Others are just running from responsibility. You learn to tell the difference. You learn to stop waiting for apologies. You learn that peace is not what happens when someone returns, it's what blooms when you finally stop hoping they will. Last week, I found myself back at that same grocery store, the same aisle, reaching for the same honey jar. The shelf was full this time. I smiled. Some stories don't need dramatic endings, just quiet proof that you've moved on and they haven't. Because when someone says you're suffocating them, give them all the air they want. Amazing how quickly